Welcome to Timeless with Julie Hartman Live. It is Monday, April 29th, 2024. I'm Julie Hartman, and for those of you who tune in a fair amount, you may notice something slightly different, and that is that I am not in my usual, beautiful, fantastic LA studio. Looking behind me, it looks like I'm just perched on a mountaintop. It's a green screen. I am actually the furthest thing from being perched on a mountaintop. I am in the trenches in New York City. I flew out here a couple of days ago to see what has been going on at Columbia University, firsthand, on the ground, myself. And my gosh, it is not a pretty picture, as we are going to be discussing today. And in real time right now, things are percolating. Things are going on. The president of Columbia said that if students on campus do not evacuate their encampment by 2 p.m. Eastern, which was, I believe, 2 hours ago, then they would face suspension. So today we're going to be talking all about that. I will be showing you some pictures and videos from my time going to Columbia. Took some footage of things that were going on outside the campus. And then in about 15 minutes, I'm bringing on a fantastic Columbia student. Her name is Ola Weber. She is a senior at Columbia. She's on the soccer team, and she's normal, shockingly. She's completely normal, and she's going to be talking to us about what it's like being a student and being a senior during a senior spring when you're supposed to be having fun and drinking and hanging out with your friends and not being accosted by Hamas supporters as you go to class and not having to take your classes online because the university campus has turned so tense. So look forward to having her on. But first, hello to Sean McConnell in Los Angeles. I miss you, Sean Z. I'm sure you miss me terribly.
I do. I miss you. I hope that you're staying safe.
Oh, I'm staying safe. I mean, I went to Columbia during the daytime, so yeah. I made sure to stay the heck away at night. I was smart enough to realize that would have been a stupid decision. But yeah, I'm safe. It's honestly been enlightening to see. I learned an amazing amount from being there. But I miss all of you in Los Angeles. You're probably so thankful for the break.
No.
By the way,
we like having you at home.
Oh, well, let's see how you feel when I actually get home and you continue to deal with me. You'll realize how much fun it was having me away in New York. We still have the call-in number. If you'd like to call in, 844-861-5537, 844-861-5537. I have it right here. For those of you who call in, I can see the call-in. I can't see the chat, though. But actually, I'm going to change that right now as I'm talking so I can see what you guys are commenting, if anything. So let's dive in. This show today is going to be all about Columbia and my time there. So, as I said, right now, things are percolating. Like right now. I want to show you this headline from the Independent UK, and it reads, Columbia University president says that negotiations with student protesters have fallen apart. This was an article that was posted 3 hours ago. And the subtext, as you can see, or the subheadline is, the university will not divest from Israel, says Columbia president. So this is really significant for several reasons. Like, a few days ago when I was on this show, I think it was April 24th to be exact, that was the day that all of these protests really kind of metastasized and the students started to be arrested on these campuses. And I remember I said on the show on that day that this day was a turning point in United States history, which sounded really dramatic, right? But I don't think it was. And I called it right then that it would be a turning point because it was, in my view, the first time that these universities in a long time have actually stood up to these students. For so long, as I discussed ad nauseum, They have given the mouse a cookie. Every time these students protested against fossil fuels and climate change and heteronormativity and, as in the case at Harvard, a class on policing or a guest speaker who wasn't sufficiently woke, every time those students threw a temper tantrum about literally anything, these universities would capitulate to them. They would follow their demands, and they would actually praise these students for being the radical activists that American society needs. And so last week, again, in my view, was like one of the first times that we actually saw the university going, no, this has gone too far. We're arresting you because we told you to clear out and you're not clearing out. Good for them. It's taken them way too damn long, but thank God they're doing it. So looking at this headline, we can see, given my turning point theory, that they appear, the university that is, appears to continue to stand firm and levy consequences for these actions. So the fact that the Columbia president said the university will not divest from Israel, that shouldn't be something that all of us should be so impressed by. Frankly, I think it's kind of the bare minimum. We should be seeing statements like these from universities all the time, holding firm to their values. But I at least read that headline, and I am, my reaction is to be a little bit surprised because I'm just not used to seeing a university president actually make a statement like that and actually make a proclamation. So let's cheer on the progress, As I say, there's a lot of reason for pessimism. Things have gotten really bad, but it has gotten so bad where now these universities are actually doing something. Thank God. So let's continue with this article, just looking at some of the specifics here. So they say, quote, talks between pro-Palestinian student protesters and Columbia University officials have broken down, according to an update from the university's president. You don't say. They've broken down. Yeah, when you're dealing with crazy people who will not follow, will not be deferential to authority and will not have a rational conversation with you and just bark with their blue hair in your face every time you challenge them, no wonder the talks have broken down. So the university president is telling them to voluntarily disperse. It's like, these students, you just forget that they're college students. They seem like they are these insane, radical activists from communist university, but they're literally just normal students at Columbia who are setting up these encampments, and they're being told to, quote, voluntarily disperse. It's like, remember the Chaz, or the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone in Seattle during 2020? They set up this encampment in Seattle where they didn't have police, and they had their hippie commune with drugs, and they remember 2 people got killed in the Chaz. This is giving Chaz vibes, except it's not in Seattle. It's on Columbia's campus. So the university is warning protesters, as I told you, to clear out by 2 p.m. Eastern today, which was 2 hours ago. So as we speak right now, perhaps students are being arrested. I would not be shocked if they are being arrested, even more students. And here's the really important part. And here's the part that makes me go, wow, okay, way too late, but good for them for actually doing this. Reading here from a university statement, the Columbia University is saying to these students, quote, it's important for you to know that the university has already identified many students in the encampment. If you do not identify yourself upon leaving and sign the form now, you will not be eligible to sign and complete the semester in good standing. If you do not leave by 2 p.m., they continue, you will be suspended pending further investigation. Another university statement says, quote, the school wants student protesters to sign a form promising adhering to the university's policies through June 2025, or the university says, quote, the date of the conferral of your degree may be, June 2025, or the date of the conferral of your degree. So basically, the university wants these individuals identified who are breaking the rules. And they are saying that if you do not follow what we are telling you to do by this time, you will be suspended. It's a big move. Again, it's like we're almost like praising a parent for parenting. It's like, good, you exacted consequences on your child. It's ridiculous that we have to even praise them for doing that, but at least it's a start. So that's what's going on in Columbia. Similar things are going on at Harvard. Similar calls for suspension, the administration stepping in and, actually having a backbone. Let's watch a quick video of what happened this weekend where people in Harvard Yard took down the American flag and hoisted a Palestine flag. The unbelievable entitlement of these people to go and just take university property and then put the flag that they want and hoist it. It is such a middle finger to the university. But as I've said literally a million times, and as I'm going to say for a million more times, what did they expect when they have given the mouse a cookie so many times over the years? They have allowed students to disrupt class. I remember when I was there, they would disrupt. There was a lecture that was given in the Smith Campus Center at Harvard, and I remember that these students came in and they were, banging stuff, and they had their "Divest from Fossil Fuels" banner. And so, to my knowledge, none of those students then were arrested or suspended. Well, they probably shouldn't have been arrested, but none of them were suspended or had disciplinary action. And so when you allow stuff like that to go on over the years, no wonder you're going to see even more of it. But this is going to sound very similar to Columbia's course of action. According to the Harvard Crimson, Harvard spokesperson Jonathan Swain wrote that action, taking the flag down and putting up a Palestinian flag, is, quote, a violation of university policies, and the individuals involved will be subjected to disciplinary action. I don't know about you, Sean, but I feel stupid praising them for actually doing what they should do. But it's nice to hear a statement like that. You just rarely hear stuff like that.
The sound of your light clap was so perfect. There was some question last week as to whether these protests were being infiltrated by outside protesters, not just students. But I learned from you this morning that you can't even get on to the Columbia campus unless you're a student. Is it the same way at Harvard? And so we can safely assume these protests happening on campus are students, and anything going on outside the university may be infiltrated by other forces.
That's a really good point. I'm glad that you brought that up, because last week on the show I played this crazy clip of people in Harvard Yard, Sean and I were laughing about it, as horrible as it was, throwing mattresses at sea or sleeping bags, and they had pillows, and they were throwing things on the yard, and it was just like a free-for-all. And afterwards, as Sean brought up, thank you for bringing that up, there were these questions raised about how many of them were students, because most of the time on these campuses, the gates are open. People can just come in. The public can just walk. They can't go into dorms. They can't go into classes, but they can go, to the center of campus. So now, yes, you're right. At Harvard, I'm not quite sure if they have restricted entry into Harvard Yard to only be students. They probably have, but it does appear that those people hoisting the flag are students, because according to this Harvard Crimson article, the protesters, the administrators were carrying ID scanners and were scanning the IDs of these protesters. So if they had IDs, then they're probably students. And also, according to the Crimson, these protesters were chanting, quote, "Harvard, Harvard, take my ID. You really can't scare me." So definitely appears that they are students. And then the university has come out and said, quote, repeat violations of university and school policies will result in increasingly severe sanctions. Students with pending disciplinary matters may not be granted a degree. So things are really, really happening right now. And, you know, colleges and universities for many years, and especially over the past few months, have gotten a lot of attention. With every new protest, you know, every kind of new thing, people have been hyper focused on it. And so sometimes when new information comes out about what's going on colleges and universities, I think people sometimes tend to kind of shut it off, or they tend to may not think that it's significant. This is really significant because this is a huge turning point in the actions of the university, actually scanning IDs, collecting names, arresting students, and saying, and hopefully they'll follow through, I don't know, but saying that they will have either be suspended or have their degree withheld if they do not follow the rules. And then finally, according to the Crimson, these protesters, students, were chanting, quote, admin, admin, you can't hide. We charge you with genocide. And gotta give them credit. They know how to rhyme. They may be radical, woke, insane, left-wing, crazy, brainwashed, stupid people, but they know how to rhyme at least. And then they continued, quote, every dollar Harvard supplies, a neighborhood in Gaza dies. So it'll be absolutely fascinating to see what happens. And one of the really tragic parts, you know, in addition to like the whole thing here is tragic. Graduation is in 3 weeks. How are they going to have graduation? Seriously. They can't have it. These individuals are taking over the yards or the quads of these universities. They're going into classrooms. They can't host. I think Harvard graduation is like 30,000 people in Harvard Yard. They can't host that. And this is reminding me, at least, of the time of COVID, which we just thought was a very unfortunate, you know, blip on the radar screen. Being sent home, having to take classes online, not having a graduation. It's a repeat, but just a different flavor. So I want to play some clips for you of my time at Columbia, but I know that we have a guest. I actually am so lucky to have met a Columbia student. She is a senior at Columbia, so thank God she only has 3 weeks left, but she's willing, God bless her, to come out publicly and talk about her experience. So Sean, is Ola with us? Should I go to Ola and then I can afterwards play some of the clips of what's going on?
We had Ola, but we don't seem to have Ola
That's fine.
at the moment. I'll tell you as soon as we have her.
That's fine. It's actually okay because I want to play some clips first. So we'll go to Ola in about 5 minutes, but because yours truly flew to New York and went to Columbia, I want to show you some videos of what I saw. So luckily, we will be talking with Ola, who is a student who can tell us what's going on inside the gates of Columbia. But as mentioned, right now on Columbia's campus, you have to be a student in order to enter the gates. So I could only go take videos and see what was going on outside of the gates of the university. But that was hugely enlightening because what has happened is that because of all these student protests, there have been many outside groups which have flocked to Columbia, set up shop on the sidewalk, and are advocating for their various beliefs and causes. So let's take a look at some of them. This is the street outside of Columbia. This is video 1. And there was this huge group of Orthodox Jews who were calling for the eradication of the state of Israel. Just see what it all looks like.
Okay, so here are some posters of the hostages. And then we have this Orthodox group, which is very anti-Israel, right here. And this is a pro-Israel group going to put up posters
That's not a student, by the way. That's a New York Jew protesting. Look at those kids, by the way. There were like 4 to 5-year-old kids. That one in the video looks a little bit older. But yeah, no, that's what's going on outside of Columbia. Super healthy vibes, right? Oh my gosh. So that girl you saw with the bullhorn, as I said during the video, not a Columbia student, just a Jewish girl who lives in New York who wanted to go and actually challenge those individuals. So, okay. Those were the Orthodox Jews outside on the street. Then, interestingly, there was another group of Muslims who were gathering to pray in the direction of Mecca, as Muslims always pray in the direction of Mecca, but they're setting up on the sidewalk. And I just took a short video because it was utterly fascinating to see on the sidewalk a group of Muslims protesting the state of Israel next to a group of Orthodox Jews protesting the state of Israel.
Subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless them, protect them, and eventually grant them victory.
So here we have this guy in a mask.
That's not a sight that you see every day. Yeah, that's the next video, which we'll show. That is not a sight that you see every day. And that individual on the microphone in front of the prayer group was saying, and I wrote down some of his direct quotes, that they should be, those of us who are listening should be very happy about what's going on these universities' campuses. And this is a turning point in the state of the world because it is calling out the state of Israel for the genocidal state that it is. And good change is coming. By the way, fascinating story for you, just quickly before we go on to the other videos. So on the sidewalk, you know, I was there for like 3 hours just watching all that was going on. And there were a lot of police, dozens and dozens of police there on the sidewalk, plus at least 4 big NYPD vans parked on the sidewalk with even more police in those vans in case something happened. It was as if a president or a dignitary or like a ambassador or something was coming to campus and they had to, you know, have heightened security. But that wasn't the case, obviously. It was just these crazy protests. But so there are all these police. And then there were sort of people like me, journalists, and just kind of citizens of New York, if you will, congregating on the sidewalk, observing what was going on. And so there was this one girl who was standing there. And again, people are yelling, you know, Israel's a genocidal state, Judaism, yes, Zionism, no, the state of Israel must go. This other guy was on a bullhorn talking about glorifying Hamas. As you'll see in a few moments, there was a guy that was holding up a sign that said, Israel equals Nazism. So all of this stuff going on. And there was this girl on the sidewalk who was maybe like 27 years old. And she looked really put together, very well dressed, and had just like a very lovely, calm demeanor. And she was weeping. She was standing there, she was looking at all of this, and she was weeping. And so I walk up to her, and I think, oh, she's weeping because this is insane. Like, this is a crazy, crazy sight, what has happened outside of these universities. And so I go up to her, and me being the lovely, kind person that I am, I put my hand on her shoulder, and I said, I know, this is really intense. It's really, really sad what's happened. And she looks at me and she says, this is the most beautiful day of my life. And I went, oh, like I thought that she was crying because she was so sad by all the radicalism. And then I walked up to her and she was crying because she thought it was so beautiful. Just shows you really don't know where people stand. that was quite a lesson in, I guess, not assuming if people agree with you. Okay, 2 more videos, or I guess 3, just quickly before we go to Ola. This guy who you're about to see was nuts. He was holding up a sign that said Israel equals Nazis. He was also wearing a big Christian cross, and on the other side, he had his poster had an American flag, and it said free speech. And I just want to show you how close he was to students, and then we'll talk about what I observed as far as students' reactions to him.
Biden. Under the Biden administration, the Secretary of State is Jewish. The Secretary of Treasury is Jewish. The Secretary of Homeland Security is Jewish. The Attorney General is Jewish. The Director of National Intelligence is Jewish. Jews control America. Everything, Wall Street, the media, tech, the fashion industry, Hollywood, professional sports. Jews are 2% of the population. The Ivy League, there are eight Ivy League schools. Harvard, Princeton, Yale, Brown, Dartmouth, Cornell, and Columbia. 6 of them have Jewish presidents. Jews are 2%. 2% of the population. Their domination of the Ivy League is typical of their domination of every sector in America.
Yeah.
We live in a Jew,
Okay.
We're under siege with powerful, rich Jews, and they have corrupted our...
Okay, so you get the point. This guy is spewing venom and hatred. And by the way, not in that video, but afterwards, he said that Jews have a, quote, diabolical agenda to bring witchcraft and child sacrifice back. He said back as if it happened, to the United States. So why do I play a clip of this guy? Some people may say, and they would be absolutely right, that this guy does not appear at all to be affiliated with Columbia University, and he's just a crazy nutbag standing on the sidewalk. So why would you give him attention, Julie, or why would you play this clip? Well, I think his presence on that sidewalk, just as the presences of all of the aforementioned groups and what they were saying on that sidewalk, is very important and reveals a lot about the university. Because clearly that guy thought that the sidewalk outside of Columbia would be a hospitable place for him to set up shop and spew his vitriolic anti-Semitic agenda. And of course, with all of these protests, there are some people who are protesting, the invasion of Gaza, or protesting Israel's perhaps imminent invasion of Rafah. Protesting the actions of Israel is not anti-Semitic. I want to be very clear about that definition when I throw it out. But that guy who's saying Israel equals Nazis, who's saying, as you just heard, that Jews have this, control everything, and they have this agenda, and they have a diabolical agenda to bring witchcraft and child sacrifice to the United States, that is in a totally different camp than protesting Israel's actions. And I have no idea what the students are saying. We're going to hear from Ola. I have no idea if they're saying similar things to that guy. It seems as though some are. I have seen videos that some are. But when I use that term to label that guy as an anti-Semite, it is warranted. That guy is a vicious anti-Semite. And so when he is standing outside of Columbia, we have to ask the question, why does he think that Columbia is a hospitable place for him to park out front and spew his hatred? It's because that things are going on at that university, which makes that individual think that it is a hospitable place for him to spew his hatred. And here's a follow-up question for you. Why is it that in my 3 hours standing outside, observing all of this, why is it that I did not see a single Columbia student confront this guy? Now, in some ways, I get it. When there's a crazy dude saying crazy stuff, you may not want to get near it for safety reasons. I got it. But even more than that, when students would walk by, many of them would throw up a fist in support of him or give a thumbs up. Why is that? And here's the million-dollar question. If that guy were standing outside of Columbia and he substituted the word Jew for any other protected class in the United States, if he said women have a diabolical agenda, trans people have a diabolical agenda, illegal immigrants have a diabolical agenda, black people, now he was black, but you got my point, black people have a diabolical agenda, substitute anything else besides the word Jew, and I bet you would see people protesting him or confronting him and trying to shout down his hatred. So why is it that a guy can set up shop and spew such hatred and bigotry towards Jews and people just walk by and give him a thumbs up? But then if it were anything else, you know that there would be a huge cabal of people surrounding him, shouting him down. Tells you everything that you need to know. And then as a final point, before we go to Ola, I'm so excited to talk with her. Another thing that I observed there was the prevalence of political symbols, not just pertaining to Israel, but there were like these pride flags. Down the block, there was a BLM flag. Everywhere you turned, it was just soaked in politics. Here's just a short video. Video 5.
I'm at Columbia University right now.
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless them, protect them, and eventually grant them victory.
Oh,
So here we have this guy in a mask holding
so
up
those are
this
the older
sign.
videos.
Look, wait till you see
Oh,
the
I'm
other
so
part
sorry.
of the sign.
This is video 4.
And these are students here trying to go to class, and they have to go through security and show their ID to get to class. This is what's outside of their school.
Well, that's a good video to see. Yeah, that's the guy who I was talking
I'm at
to.
Columbia
This is the
University
video,
right
yes.
now. The entrance is down there, and there is a Orthodox group right here who is protesting the state of Israel. They say we're against Zionism because we're Jews. There's a guy with a sign up there that says that the state of Israel equals Nazism. And this is actually a moment of calm. Like students have been saying to me, this is very, very calm compared to what they've been seeing. But I want to show you one thing. You notice, look at that pride flag. Like there are so many political symbols all around here. Down there were these BLM posters. There were these trans literature posters over there. And just these universities, in so many ways, have turned into these cesspools of crazy politics. Like everywhere you turn, it's politics. It's nuts.
Yeah, there was a trans literature, like protect trans literature poster, and it was just very interesting to see like the confluence of all of these things. And I don't think that it's a coincidence, because these students, and of course those people, as I've said, are not students, but students on these campuses have gotten so political in so many different ways. And it just shows that the kind of identity of these universities have now become political activism courses. Like they're just places where people go to advocate for BLM and for pride and for trans literature and for, ceasefire now. And it's like, wait a minute, this is nuts. This is a university. Yes, part of going to a university is learning about politics or the tenets of political thought. But the fundamental, in my view, vocation of a university is to teach you how to think and to give you a kind of space to engage in free debate and open dialogue and learn about a variety of subjects and picnic out on the lawn with your friends. Like, it's not supposed to be DNC headquarters, You're not supposed to have all of these posters and all of this politics. College should be a time when you get away from that. Not all of life is politics. But anyway, just wanted to highlight that because I think that they're kind of pieces of a greater puzzle of just intense, widespread political radicalism and brainwash. So the chat, people are saying, love your Instagram videos. I'm so glad that you love them, because it was not the most encouraging 3 hours, but it was very interesting. People are saying, oh, good, you like the backdrop. Someone is writing, I fail to see why this needs that much oxygen. Well, this is ground zero for what's going on in the United States. The United States used to boast its universities as being indicative of how fantastic the United States was, how many resources we had, that we were training the best and the brightest in our nation. Universities are very much tied up with American identity. And so this needs oxygen, because if the universities are descending into the dregs like this, it's a greater commentary on our country. All right, it's Ola time. Ola, I know you've been waiting for a little bit. Welcome on to the show. I mentioned Ola's background. Yes, she deserves the clapping. There you are. Hi.
Hi, how are you?
I mentioned.
Long time no talk.
I know, long time no talk. Those of you who are watching the live show, I guest hosted for Dennis Prager this morning, and I interviewed Ola, and she was so great. We had such an interesting discussion that I said, come back for round 2 later today on Timeless. So here she is at Columbia. She's got 3 weeks left. She's a soccer player, and we're just going to chat about what is going on there. So, Ola, first, tell people, where are you, and what if the past few weeks looked like? Are you taking classes online? Do you go to campus at all? What does your life look like right now?
Yeah, so again, I'm so excited to talk to you again. I'm currently in New York. I live, quote unquote, off campus because I'm not in campus housing, but I'm on 113th Street. So I'm a block away from campus. And to put it into context, like right next to my apartment building is a dorm building. So I'm off campus, but not really. So I'm in New York right now. This past weekend, I went to New Jersey to get away from all the craziness. And actually a ton of my Jewish friends went home as well. And not many of them are lucky enough to live 45 minutes away from school. I know 2 people that went back to California, and I know someone that went to Michigan. So I just came back because I want to be here for the last 3 weeks, right? It's like my senior year. There are a bunch of events going on, but all my classes are online. And the one final that I have, it is on next Friday, and it's open book, open note, online, take home. So there's no real reason for me to go on campus. And if I do, I'm always surrounded by a big group of my guy friends that if anything went awry, they would step in.
Good. You should absolutely do that. I should have brought some of my guy friends to the sidewalk in front of Columbia, but it was like 12 o'clock in the afternoon. Didn't get too bad until later. So as a Jewish student walking around, are people aware that you're Jewish? And is there this kind of like hostility between the pro-Palestine protesters? And by the way, I don't even kind of like that term. I've never liked that term, pro-Palestine, because it implies that people who are pro-Israel aren't, pro-Palestine or aren't pro-Palestinians. Just, I think those labels are kind of weird. Plus, a lot of those protesters are glorifying Hamas, which is very different than being pro-Palestine. But you take my point. Do people know that you're Jewish? And is there this kind of tension between those protesters and Jewish students?
Yeah, so not many people do know that I'm Jewish. My dad's Jewish, my mom's Roman Catholic. I'm very immersed in the athlete community, and it's interesting once you sort of, and this is true for, this isn't unique to Columbia, but when you sort of immerse yourself in one group or one community, the athletes, or if you're part of a specific club. The first time I went to a Chabad event was like 5 months ago. So I'm not super immersed in Jewish life here. Something I regret. I wish I was more involved. So not many people do know that I'm Jewish, but that also offers a really unique lens, right? Because people aren't really censoring what they're saying around me, and I get to hear sort of an unfiltered conversation as to what people think about what's going on campus. Um, but for the students that are outwardly Jewish, that are heavily involved in Chabad and Hillel, um, and that have been on Fox News, CNN, that have been public about their disdain for what's happening on campus, they are met with a ton of resistance walking around campus. They have people DMing them on
Mm.
Instagram. It's a hostile environment, and I don't say that lightly. And so they go home. They went home. If there's no reason for them to be on campus, and they're going to be met with hostility trying to get to class, and people linking arms and creating human chains to move them away from the encampment, there's no reason to be here.
Yeah, no, I know a lot of, well, I shouldn't say a lot, I know like four Columbia students
Yeah.
who are staying in hotels because they lived on campus and they're just going to Midtown and staying in hotels because it's so crazy there. So I sort of want to go back a little bit to, let's start after October 7th because, correct me if I'm wrong, but what's going on right now is different than what was going on sort of in the weeks and months after October 7th. Not to say it wasn't bad then, obviously it was. But now things have really seemed to even kind of go to the next level where these students are being arrested and finally the university is stepping in and taking names and threatening suspension. So can you kind of like give us a little walkthrough of like what did these protests look like over the past few months and when and how and why, in your view, did it become so big as it is now?
Yeah, it's super interesting. I think back in October, so the attack happened October 7th, and then I think it was something like 5 or 6 days, maybe even less, 4 days after the attack, there's a massive pro Palestinian. And again, I agree with you. I share the same sentiment saying pro Palestine because if you're pro Palestine, you're not doing what these kids are doing on the lawns. But
Yes.
uh, it was a pro Palestinian protest 6 days after the attack. And I was certainly confused as to what the message of that was, right? It's like, okay, let's say 9/11 happens. It's like 5 days later a group of people come and protest pro Al Qaeda. It's just like it doesn't make a ton of sense. They were waving Hamas's flag, people were like
Right.
hiding Hamas's flag. So it's like that's not pro Palestine. You're celebrating what happened on October 7th. So that was the initial sort of protest, but it of course wasn't met with resistance from the administration. I'm not like aware of sort of the what goes on behind closed doors, but I'm assuming that they followed the rules on, there's a code of conduct. There's a way to protest and to do it in a respectful manner that doesn't violate the code. Um, and so I'm assuming they didn't violate it in November and December. They were very consistent in their protesting, but it never crossed the line of, camping out on lawn. So that was certainly a hostile time, but that was more so based on, everything that was happening in the world. You have people that I knew that were in my classes, they were IDF soldiers, and they left. They were gone. They went back to Israel to fight for their country. So it was a very
Mm.
tensions were high for different reasons because it was fresh. What had happened was super scary, and then sort of the lackluster response by not only the Columbia community but the world around us, right? There was like 2 days where people were sympathetic for the Israelis, and then all of a sudden it was somehow Israel's fault for Hamas to come in and kill 1,600 innocent lives. Um, so that was that. Things kind of dwindled down. We had winter break, and then I don't know what I mean. What had happened was there was a ton of people that were posting the Israeli citizens that are still held hostage, and a ton of pro-Palestinians ripped that off the walls and vandalized it. And so tensions started to slowly rise again. And then I don't know what sort of catalyzed their decision to go and camp out on the lawns. But what I do know is when they started to camp out, they were there for 24 hours, and administrators were begging and pleading with them to please leave. They had violated the rules and they would be met with punishment. They refused to leave. And then Shafik, called the NYPD, and they did what they had to do. Now, do I think that it's a coincidence that that was like a day after her congressional hearing? No. But it was, people failed to acknowledge the fact that these kids were warned repeatedly to leave, and they didn't. And you can decide whether you think that, taking the measure to bring the NYPD was necessary, but typically when you break the rules, you will be met with punishment. So now it's just there's NYPD. I mean, as you adequately put, like there's NYPD presence everywhere, all around campus. And then I think they said 2 p.m. today that they were gonna start taking kids off the lawn, and the faculty created a human chain, and that's the last I heard of it. So that's kind of where we are right now.
Yeah, we'll see. As I started the show, like this is all happening as we speak right now. So it'll be very interesting to see if the university actually follows through and actually continues to call for the arrest of these students and suspend them. So obviously it's hard to capture what a whole group of protesters thinks and believes, because a whole group is comprised of individuals. So I always really try to be careful not to paint people with a broad brush, but sometimes generalizations are necessary. What are these protesters, these Columbia students who are setting up camps and waving Palestine flags and chanting from the river to the sea? Is it clear to you, like, what do they actually believe and what do they actually want and what are they actually protesting? That's never been fully clear to me. Do you know?
I've given this so much thought because part of me wants to believe it is a group of ignorant, uneducated, and ill-informed students who watch 5 or 6 TikTok videos and believe that they are experts on the conflict, and they believe that their voice must be heard, and that's why they're on the lawn, because they want to bring justice, right? So honestly, that would be my hope. I hope it comes from a place of ignorance and they're just ill-informed. What I'm starting to realize is that's not the truth. There are very few things in life where there are just no gray area. Terrorist organizations, terrorism, Hamas, Hezbollah, there is zero gray area with these organizations, okay? There's nothing good about them, zero. And so what I'm starting to realize is there are many sympathizers that are on this campus that, think Hamas is doing a pretty great job and they sympathize with their cause. And I agree with you. I think it's dangerous to generalize or speak for a group of people because everyone has their own background and their own reasons for protesting. But I'm starting to get the sense that, and I never want to default or fall back on this because, sometimes I think it could be a cop out, and I don't want to default on something that I think kind of like takes away from a conversation and just labels it as one thing, because I don't like when that's happened in other situations. But this is an anti-Jew protest. People, I mean, you heard the guy, you were there in person, and you're right. The people, it's interesting to see the people that are attracted and feel comfortable voicing their opinions outside of Columbia's walls. It resonates with what's happening on the lawns. It's indicative of what the kids are saying on the lawns. So, you typically go to areas and express yourself in environments where you feel like you'll be heard or people will sympathize with you. And it's no surprise that I mean, I don't need to explain those videos. All those videos speak for themselves. So people do not like the idea of a Jewish state, and a lot of people don't like Jews. I mean, history shows a lot of people don't like Jews. So
Mhm.
I would hazard to guess, if you go on that lawn and you take a group of 10 people and you say, what is the Intifada? Like, what are you calling for? Intifada revolution. What does that mean? Or, um, you know, do, how do you feel about other genocides going on in the world? What about Yemen, Congo? They won't know anything. So I think it's a mixture of being ignorant and then also just people not really liking Jews.
I mean, 100%. And that last thing is a very real reality. That people just they go, oh, like some people are brainwashed, they're this, they're that. And yes, of course, not all of these individuals hate Jews, but there are some people who just hate Jews. And I think too, a lot of this is I always observe how people generally, like super woke people, if I may generalize, tend to really only get outraged about oppression when it is a quote unquote white person or white country oppressing a quote unquote non-white person or non-white country. And we see that here in the United States where, during Black Lives Matter, when a white cop or white police officer killed a black man, people were incredibly outraged. Or when a white person kills a black person, people are very outraged. But when a black person kills a black person, crickets. And that's like very morally confusing to me, because it's like Black Lives Matter regardless of who the perpetrator is. But this is also true globally, where we see that, I've done so many segments on the show about what's going on in Haiti, the gang violence that has descended in the country of Haiti. By many reports, there's cannibalism going on in Haiti. But because it's black people killing other black people, generally a lot of wokesters don't seem to care. How about in China? They massacre Uyghur Muslims. They send them to concentration camps and, make them slaves, kill many of them, and harvest their organs. And globally, these wokesters don't really care. They only seem to care when they can point and go, white country Israel, and I'm putting that in blinking quotation marks because, as we know, Israel is half non-white. But they love to spin it. They only have this outrage when it can be spun to their political benefit. And in addition to that being morally wrong, if I may even kick it up a notch, I actually weirdly think that has a tinge of white supremacy, which is so funny because that's the thing that they always fight against. But essentially you're saying that non-white people's suffering only matters when it's white people doing it to them. And that gives some strange white supremacy vibe, wittingly or not.
Yeah.
What do you make of that?
I think that's so interesting. I mean, you look at what's happening in Congo, millions of people killed, Afghanistan, Syria, Yemen. You don't hear about this stuff. And look, if you want to protest your heart away, I'm right there with you. What's happening in these countries is horrific. I just think it's interesting that they pick and choose what they want to protest. And you're right. But this goes back to my point of maybe they're just so ill-informed, and this is being optimistic. Like if you call Israel a quote unquote white country, you don't know what you're talking about. Around 1,850,000 Arab Jews were refugees and came to Israel in the 40s and the 50s. You're right. It's like half white, half a mixture of everything else. So for people to say, oh, Israel's a colonial white, no, absolutely not. Absolutely not. And that just goes back to my point. They really don't know what they're talking about. And that's not only they're ill-informed about Israel, they're ill-informed about Gaza. You want to talk about the real oppressors to the Palestinian people in Gaza? It's Hamas, right? If you're super pro-Palestine, you're anti-Hamas. That's what you're protesting against. They are the oppressors. They're a terrorist organization. They use women and children as human shields. So you have to start wondering, like, what are they actually protesting? And you're right, the people that are always talking about how they don't want to be labeled are the ones that are constantly labeling others. It's just the hypocrisy
Mhm.
is sometimes too much to wrap your head around. But you know what? I've come to the conclusion that wokeism is one of the biggest threats to democracy, to America, and to Western civilization. And that might sound, um, like I'm talking in hyperbole, but it is such a
No.
dangerous ideology and mindset. It really is. And now we see it. We see it firsthand what happens.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I when I kind of had my moment of waking up in college, I remember seeing moral confusion being spread in so many categories, metastasizes, and that's my favorite word these days. I'm using that all the time, but it really, in my judgment, is the best word for right now, because a lot of people didn't kind of see these strands coming together. And I remember thinking, when you spread moral confusion in some categories, it's going to bleed into others. And it's going to create what we're seeing now. And I'll give you an example. I remember during Black Lives Matter, which was my moment of huge awakening to wokeism. I remember when people were rioting and looting in the streets after George Floyd's death and, smashing windows, by the way, and a lot of black owned businesses got destroyed. Nobody talked about that, right? And people were smashing windows and stealing. It was crazy. And I remember seeing people on Instagram, my classmates, writing, don't be mad at a Black person right now for rioting or looting or stealing. They're taking back what's theirs. And it's interesting to see, because when Hamas executed its terrorist attack on October 7th, we saw many people use that same argument. Oh, Hamas is, it is okay for Hamas to do what they did, raping women, beheading babies, murdering, slaughtering people, taking hostages, because they're taking back what's theirs. And that's the point. Moral confusion and using faulty arguments, and indeed, I believe, evil arguments. It's not just confined to some categories. It's going to bleed into all.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And the real shame is that the reason why this conflict evokes so much emotion in people is because both sides have very legitimate cases and causes. The issue is that what's happening out there, it has nothing to do with Palestine. It's this other sort of woke agenda, right? And so that's the real shame, is it's completely delegitimized their cause, because now they're saying, oh, well, a terrorist attack, a full-fledged terrorist attack, it's justifiable because this is against those that are being oppressed have a right to do that against the oppressors. And it's a shame, because this could be a time where there could be seriously very thoughtful and constructive conversations on supposedly one of the best academic institutions in the world's campus, right? Like, you're right. This is where these conversations should be happening. All viewpoints should be heard. Of course, you need to substantiate them with facts, make sure people aren't just like spewing random stuff. But this could be a time for people to really get educated about the conflict and seriously critically think about, okay, here's the facts, here's the history, what do we think about what's going on now? But to completely blur the message by advocating for what Hamas is doing, you not only delegitimize Palestine's cause, but you take a conflict that's super serious and you turn it into something that is seriously for their own agenda. And it's a shame, because this could be a moment where people are educated on the conflict, and they're not.
So I asked you this question a few hours ago when I was guest hosting for Dennis, and it was my favorite question. I had a feeling it was your favorite question. Not that I want to speak for you, but it's so interesting to me. Do you regret going to Columbia?
It is a very good question. It is well, you're right. You spoke for me, but you were right. It was my favorite question.
It was the listener's favorite question. I got emails from people about it.
Yeah. I have met incredible people at the school. This is a very weak moment, not only for Columbia, but for a lot of these elite schools. So it's difficult because I want to be, I'm grateful for my experience, for the people I've met. I have a wonderful job coming out of this school. The soccer team was an incredible experience. And, you know, I'm as disappointed as I am in the institution. I know that hundreds and hundreds of kids would kill to be in my position. So I want to preface my answer by saying that I'm very grateful for my experience and for my time at Columbia. That said, selfishly, I would have preferred to have gone to a school where I felt more comfortable speaking my mind, speaking openly about these hot button topics, and a school that I felt like really fostered an environment in which they wanted kids to learn. And I'm not talking about learning about, you know, like being able to code on R and doing econometrics and linear regressions. Those are super important as well. But I want to be around people that can articulate themselves in a respectful manner. Their ideas are driven by facts and they can substantiate them. And it's not driven by emotion. Everyone, I feel like, I don't want to generalize, but a ton of people on this campus, again, these are supposed to be the smartest and the most capable young students of our generation. They cannot articulate themselves, number one. And number two, they're not well read, and everything is driven by emotion, and if you believe X then you're Y, which is just counterproductive. So going back to your question, I don't know if regret is the right word. I wish I wasn't so caught up in the name of Columbia and these Ivy League institutions. Easier said than done, obviously. And I wish I really prioritized feeling like I could go to a place where open dialogue was encouraged and fostered. But that said, I don't know what school that would be. I really don't.
You know, that's a really, really honest and insightful answer, that you got caught up in the name. And we all did. You know, I, as someone who went to Harvard, of course I wanted to go to Harvard for many of the amazing opportunities which I enjoyed. But I think all of us who go to these universities, of course we want the name, you know?
Yeah.
And we worked so hard in high school, and we wanted the prestige of the name. But I think right now, and the Free Press did an amazing article about this, very interesting article about how a lot of college students are actually looking to go to universities in the South. I think a lot of people are seeing that it's not worth it having the name if you don't get to go to college, you know, and you don't really get to have the experience. And so I just love that you said that. We could talk for so long, and I'm sure we will. I'd love to have you back on sometime. And I thank you so much for your openness. Anytime, really, anytime. But I want to close with maybe a little bit of a somber question, but I really want your honest answer about this. Do you have hope for the future? Or are you scared about your future, the future of this country, and what your life might look like in this crazy moment of all these crazy people coming out of the woodwork?
I do have hope that we still have good people in this country that have very strong moral compasses, and you know, this anti-American sort of, it's like vogue right now to be anti-American, which is interesting because the people that dislike this country so much, I always say, well, no one's keeping you here. So if you really don't like America,
go leave. Go to Iran.
Yeah, right.
Go to Gaza or go to Iran. I'll pay for your ticket.
Yeah. So I really do believe that we still have what it takes to uphold democracy, to be the country that we can be. However, seeing what has happened on these college campuses the past couple of weeks, and I really do believe like the deep-rooted ties between some of these leaders, these school leaders, and these groups in the Middle East, and it's just all too messy right now. And that really worries me, because the radical ideologies coming from a Hezbollah or a Hamas. I'm so sorry, someone's texting me.
How dare
Oh my
they? Tell them that you
I
are
know,
on a
I'm like,
live show.
I know. I'm like, what are you doing? I'm so sorry. And it was such a somber question too. I, these radical ideologies, I'm worried that it really has become ingrained in the fabric of America right now, especially with these students. They're completely brainwashed. And if we're going to go along the lines of, this is the future of our country, I'm super scared. I'm super scared, not only because of what I've seen, but because, I mean, you have a kid who, if you misgender them or you say the wrong thing, it's the end of the world, or the person that said it can get canceled. I mean, we're walking on such thin ice with things that really, in the grand scheme of things, are kind of trivial. And then when it comes to like being involved in terrorist organizations and encouraging their attacks, there's no one blinks an eye. So we've seemed to have lost the plot a little bit, and everything seems a bit backwards right now. The only thing I am hoping is that this is the beginning of the pendulum swinging back.
Yes.
I'm hoping, because I hope people wake up and realize that this is not the road we want to go down. The last thing I want to say, Charles Krauthammer, who's one of my favorite commenters and politician, and he's just so smart, historian, writer. He was the best. He said, the day that America stops supporting Israel is the day Western civilization starts to spiral downward. And I really believe that. So he continues to be someone who I think saw into the future. And I hope that we prove him wrong, that we won't stop supporting Israel, because they are a beacon of hope in an area that there's a ton of corruption and sadness. So I have hope, but I'm hoping that this is the beginning of the pendulum swinging. And if it isn't, then I think we're in real big trouble.
Well said. And for those listening who may not have hope themselves, let me give you some hope right now. I have always felt this, but especially with all that has happened over the past 2 months, I am so redoubled in my motivation to collect people like Ola and good, rational people who are brave enough to say something and support them in any way that I can. And Ola and I have a mutual friend who connected us, who's a fantastic person. Oh my gosh, is she like out there swinging for goodness and truth and beauty. And so there really are a lot of great people. And I know that I'm going to try to do everything I can, again, to support those people. And we're in the fight of our lives. We're coming, up in adulthood at a time that is really hard, but our country needs us. And I'm motivated, and I'm all the more motivated meeting people like you. So thank you, Ola, for coming on. And this is not the last time we'll be chatting. What was that?
Well, it was great talking to you. I said the feeling's mutual. I think what you're doing is fantastic. And I know this will not be the last time we speak. So thank you again for having me. And hopefully there's some sort of a light at the end of this tunnel.
Yes. And as I said to you on Dennis's show, I'll say it to you again. Enjoy your last few weeks. Go have fun. And congratulations on all of your hard work as a student athlete. It's incredibly commendable. So don't let these crazy people stop you from enjoying your senior spring, whatever that looks like. And we'll talk soon.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Be well. Wow, Sean. I mean, you were producing Dennis's show, and now you're producing my show, so you saw a lot of Ola today. Isn't she great?
Yeah, she's
what
an
insightful commentary.
Individual. Yeah,
very.
I really enjoy listening to her, and oddly enough, she gives me hope. She gives me hope.
Of course, of course.
And
Absolutely.
she hinted on what I always say, that I believe in the good people, the moral people of this country. We may not be loud, but we are there every day, doing what it takes, and I believe in the goodness of this country. I think we amplify the fringe. The crazy gets right to the top of the headlines. But I know every day the hardworking people of this country are busy struggling, trying to make it and raise their kids and fight this nonsense. So, yeah, it's hard to remember that, but I try to remind myself every day that that's the case.
Well, we may turn this show into the Good People Show because I want to bring on individuals like that. And there really are so many to show people that they exist, because you're absolutely right. And I think we tend to be so sort of obsessed with the crazies that we forget about all the good ones. And so, yeah, well, stay tuned for more good people I'm bringing onto the show. Thank you so much for joining me here in New York City. I'll be back in LA next week, but I'll be in New York for the next few days, going back to Columbia, back to Ground Zero to see that all that is going on. But before I bid you adieu, I want to talk to you about My Pillow. I use a lot of My Pillow products, as those of you who watch the show know. I sleep on a My Pillow. I sleep on the Giza Dream bed sheets. I use my towels, and I wear my slippers. And you can get a lot of these products at a discount too if you use the promo code Hartman. And right now, My Pillow is having a $25 extravaganza. Their sheets, their towel sets, even their pillows are all $25. And orders over $75 will receive free shipping. As I often say, I use these products. I wouldn't advertise them if I didn't use them. So please do go check that out, especially because they are having a massive sale. So what you can do is go to mypillow.com and use the promo code Hartman. That's mypillow.com and use the promo code Hartman. As Sean always says, Hartman is spelled with no E and one N, Hartman. All right, everybody, I'll see you tomorrow at 1 o'clock Pacific, 4 o'clock Eastern, right here. I'm sure there are going to be more updates pertaining to this Columbia situation, and yours truly will be heading up there. Dear God, pray for me to see it for myself. But thank you. As always, you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Julie R. Hartman. You can write to me at julie@julie-hartman.com. Take care. I'll see you soon.